That's a great scene setting by Mark there, and it really sets us up for our next presentation. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a true blue dub, Mr. Bertie Ahern, a man who has served at all levels in public life: Taoiseach, Tánaiste, Minister of Finance, Enterprise and Trade, Minister of Labour, Government Chief Whip, TD for 34 years, and a Lord Mayor for Dublin in 1986, and we understand now the difference between a mayor and a Lord Mayor. Bertie has seen it all, and I can think of nobody better to explain the political realities of a directly elected mayor and the devolution of powers. Please welcome Ir Taoiseach, Mr. Bertie Ahern.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good morning to you all. And my congratulations and thanks to all of you for giving your time on this citizen assembly to try and deal with one of those difficult and really brain-shattering jobs of trying to work out how we should go forward. But I wish you well in that, and I congratulate the Secretariat for really, I've seen what the groups you've had and the groups you're to have over these days to work it all out. I suppose I come with a lifelong, getting old now, but a lifelong of being involved. I was 10 years in Dublin Corporation. I was leader of the Fianna Fáil group in the corporation when we had a majority back in the 80s. I was Lord Mayor. I chaired the Millennium for anyone here that's old enough for 3 years, so we're dealing with all of the groups back in 1988. I started the Millennium as leader of the group in the council. Then I was Lord Mayor, and then I was Minister for Labour, but I continued on dealing with Dublin issues. And then as Minister of Finance for 3 terms, dealing with the finances of local authority, and then of course Taoiseach. I've been asked, and I want to kind of keep it what I was asked to do, what powers need to be devolved in order to make a directly elected mayor effective, and just my views on what needs to happen to make that work. And secondly, why the question that came up just earlier, why a directly elected mayor was not, why it didn't happen to date, and why it was taken out of the bill. Maybe I did with that one first because the question came up earlier on. What happened in 2000, a lot of us, including myself, we were very enthusiastic about having a direct elected Lord Mayor, and we'd been very enthusiastic about the reform back in the earlier years when we divided Dublin into different local authorities. It used to be Dublin Corporation, and it was the county. That's the way it was for years. And then we divided to Fingal, Dublin South. You're familiar with that. So we thought by having a mayor, an elected official, somebody who would be, Mr. or Ms. Dublin, that would have a huge impact. And then, quite frankly, the more we discussed it, there were 2 issues. One, we decided probably, you get a whole lot of celebs that would run for it. And when they got elected, they wouldn't care 2 damns about the city and county too much. And every week it'd be a PR exercise. What do we say this week to make the Sunday Indo or RTE happy? And that wouldn't do much really for the city. And that was one of the reasons. And the second reason was we looked at some of the great and grandiose systems around the world where you have directly elected mayors that have control of everything. Control of the police, control of teaching, control of all of the facilities that would be operating in the city. And that's just so far, as Mark was saying, that's just so far removed from the system we have. I cannot envisage us having that kind of a system in this country. I just don't. Maybe it's because I'm 70 now, but I just don't see it. I cannot see us having a department or a mayor's office with his advisors and his staff. And that's what would happen. The mayor would come in, and the mayor, not alone would you get devolved powers from departments and agencies, but then you would have friction between the Custom House, and believe me, saw it all. Friction between Custom House and the Ministry, between the agencies and the Ministry, between the Taoiseach's office and the City Council. And then you'd have the Mayor with a whole lot of advisors. And, you know, to be honest with you, in my personal view, I think you'd have a dog's dinner of a system. So the idea of the police or the teachers or the schools all being centralised like that, I just don't see it. So that's my view. You can agree or disagree. Now come back to the services that the council can run. I mean, the council run very well the libraries, the parks, the refuse, even though they decentralised some of those, the planning, the waterworks, the housing maintenance could be better. But they run most of these services fairly well. The big projects, and I remember I was saying to the chairman just earlier, I remember some of the big projects. I was keenly anxious that we would get the 30,000 trucks that were in the cities of Dublin off the streets, and that we would put a tunnel into Dublin. Now, I talked to the officials at the time, and they said, "Oh, you know, how could you do that?" We had to go off and get advisors from here, there, and everywhere. We had to fight with the Custom House to get, even though I was Minister of Finance, I had power of the money. That's the only power I had. We went to the business people of the city, and you'd have all the wrangles. And at that time, I remember well, just very briefly to say, the business people wanted the tunnel from Alexander Basin down to Custom House and to run under the Liffey and come up at Houston Station and then out onto the road. I wanted to go Dublin-Belfast because we were had started working on the Belfast road to Rosslare at that time. The business people wouldn't agree with the one to the airport, which I thought was the logical one. I live in Drumcondra, by the way. But it was the business people. I said, well, if you want that, you fund that. We'll fund the other one. But the rows and the arguments from 1992 till the day I finally opened in 2007, and almost you had to push and drive the system to do it. Now, as the chairman said, well, that's really what a mayor should be doing. But it's not how it works in this city, quite frankly. The big major infrastructural projects, you have the department, you have ministers, you have agencies, and as you go into transport, you have Dublin Transport Authority, you have the NRA, and you have all these agencies, and trying to grapple with it and pull it together is very, very complex. I think as Mark has said, the appetite to devolve powers is very limited within the system. It's very limited. They will give out powers that are not that relevant. And I think Dublin City Council, Dublin Council, they do a relatively good job on the small things. Now, where you are, how can we make the system better? I think rather than just focus on the directly elected mayor, I think if our councils were stronger, if our councillors were given more powers, if the councillors had more resources, there are within the councils, I think, an appetite maybe for a federal system in Dublin where we could, try to empower the councils through a federal system to actually evolve over time to a system where we would have a far better system than we presently have. I think the idea of Dublin City Mayor on its own, the city is the city. One of the problems we had back in 2000, we wanted a bed tax. But the argument was a bed tax would only be in the city. And you'd be drawn one side of the road to be the city, the other side would be the county, it'd be Fingal. And Fingal, we're in Fingal now, but they didn't have a great appetite for one system for the entire city. I think if you're going to, I'd love to see whatever proposal you come up with, and it's your call ultimately, is one for Dublin. Dublin is Dublin. And, when I started in politics, we were just under 3 million of a population. I think by the end of this decade, we'll be a population of 6 million. The country has developed rapidly. We had less than, when I was Minister for Labour, we had 950,000 people working. Now we've 2.5 million. And I think that's going to continue to grow. So we're a far more sophisticated, complicated county. And I think to say that what we presently have should stay, no, it shouldn't, because we've far bigger population. But I don't think directly mayor on its own is going to do it. I think it has to be done by trying to develop the city into some kind of and the county into a federal system where we have far stronger council, where we have maybe far more officials and maybe far more technical and scientific officials working for Dublin County. I think that's the road to go. Having a figurehead, you know, who has to get elected every few years, who'll always be looking at short-sighted issues. That's the problem with democratic politics, that you're always looking to the next election. I'm not too sure that'll help us. I mean, I think the purpose, the exercise, is to make Dublin County more effective, efficient, to make it run better, to make it a modern place, city and county. And that requires and needs kind of new energy. But to start devolving everything into that structure, I don't think is necessary, quite frankly. But there's so much need. We're going to need new jobs. I mean, I remember when we got the extension to Dublin Airport, the biggest objection I fought because I was asked to do Terminal 2 in Dublin Airport, and I laugh now with all of the criticism you get and the huge problems we had even getting Terminal 2 because there was vested interest within the airport of doing that. Now we need even to do more. When we were building the tunnel, the vested interests, and mainly because politicians were pushing it, mainly I was pushing it at the time, the argument was that the houses would fall into the tunnel. And even though we had experts from Switzerland and Austria, and then there was the leaks that would be always flooded. A few buckets of water thrown around the place, and there'd be photographs in the national paper saying, oh, it's going to be flooded all the time. As soon as it was opened, there wasn't a word about it. But they're the difficulties that you get trying to force change and force things through. So I believe, Chairman, that it's our structures, helping our councillors, helping our city, more expertise within the city, federal system for the whole county, directly mayor maybe down the road, putting in a mayor at the start of that. In my view, dog's dinner won't work. They won't have the powers. They won't have the structures. It'll just be a system that, you know, isn't going to be effective. So maybe a 10-year plan where we start devolving federal system, build it up. I think that's great. But fiscal autonomy, local authorities get most of their money from the government. In Dublin's case, 40% is Dublin government grants. To move that position over to local authorities, I think it's well worth trying to do. But it won't be done overnight. Only 7% of local property tax goes into local authority income, should be far more. And there's even a whole lot of restrictions on that. If you were to take the development levies in Dublin, the money goes into a capital account, and the capital account is controlled by the Custom House. So they don't even have control of that. Motor tax is meant to all go on roads, but it doesn't. So there are a whole lot of areas where I think that kind of powers and suggestions can quickly change. I mean, why isn't motor tax all going on roads in Dublin? Why isn't more property tax? Why is development levies? They're a huge amount. They're not small things. They're not like the bus stops. They're big issues that would help the city. Chairman, I think, my time is almost up, but I think councillors, I worked with councillors at all levels, and they are the elected people. And the more help and assistance, the more, you know, people, we've good people, they'll have more time. The more, I think the committees are a good idea that work in Dublin. They're able to micro-manage a lot of the projects. They're able to look at the big water schemes, the sewage schemes. You know, as Dublin grows rapidly, you need people to do that. But it can be done at the local level, and that's assisting councillors to do that. And I think there's I'm great trust in council, great trust in that we can build up the quality and time that councillors can give to their job if we give them the resources to do it. But I think to start at the top and nominate or put in a directly elected mayor was precisely the reason we ran away from it 20 years ago. We put it in the Act and we took it out because we saw it as workable. We saw it as ungovernable. We saw it as creating a bigger mess than the one we had. It wasn't that we were parish fund politicians that wanted to hold on to power. In fact, a lot of the powers that we had, we would gladly have got rid of off the cabinet table because a lot of them just brought headaches. But to have the friction between Taoiseach's office, Minister's office, Custom House, agencies, Lord Mayor, City Council, Lord Mayor officials, City Council officials, outside experts, and put that into modern day Dublin as we develop is not the way to go in my view. Thank you very much.